Welcome to The Adult Table, a podcast where we sit down with people in the SASE and our STEM community. We set the virtual table to bring in a diverse set of guests to engage in a casual conversation on their professional career and life.
With this podcast, we hope that we can bridge the gap between the hierarchy involved with growing up. We can redefine what it means to be able to figuratively sit at the adult table.
I'm one of your co-hosts, Jason Chin.
And I'm your other co-host, Jenny Chung. Today we have Liz Fujita, who is the new director of collegiate programs at SASE, and who I had the pleasure of also meeting in person recently at SASE National Convention last week in Atlanta. So we know you've been busy prepping and running everything. So we appreciate you giving us some time to chat. So could you give the listeners a brief introduction of yourself and what else you've been up to these days?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited about this. Again, hi, my name is Liz. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the new director of collegiate programs here with SASE. And I guess really the main thing that I've been up to is learning everything there is to learn about SASE. I joined the team in August officially, but it's a lot to figure out in a very short amount of time, especially in the lead up to the national convention. So it feels like, my job and my hobby and my free time is all kind of SASE right now, just trying to get all the names and understand all the words and figure out what everything is. But I'm really excited to be here. So yeah, thanks again for inviting me to this platform.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we thought it would be a good way for listeners in the SASE crowd to kind of get to know you, because I know it's like a recent role, and I think it's a new role too within SASE to have a director of collegiate programs. So it's good to see that SASE is expanding in that aspect.
Yeah, the most overwhelming thing I've heard is, oh my gosh, this is so great, because now there's 2 dedicated people for collegiate in addition to our whole army of volunteers. So it's really exciting because now Matt and I can work on a lot of things and we can make so much more happen because there's 2 of us, and it just it doubles what we can do. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah. I remember when I heard that someone was going into this role, it sounded really cool. Like I was a previous volunteer and I just knew how much there was to do. And I feel like just adding in a second person, the abilities for the 2 of you is really like expands a lot. And like with so many more chapters getting added, so many new collegiate members going added. So it's really cool to see that that's like a focus there. I kind of want to ask just like a background of like, how do you even find out about the position, and like what appealed to you about like joining an org like SASE, jumping into something so new and with so much room for like improvement and growth?
It's really and truly, this is an example of just the power of your network and sort of staying in touch with people, even if it's just keeping in touch on LinkedIn or whatever. So kind of got to rewind a little bit, but early on in my career, I was a member of an organization called NASPA, which is one of the professional organizations for folks who work in student affairs, right? So if you work at a university and your staff and in student supporting roles, that's called student affairs. And within the NASPA professional community, they have sort of sub-communities. So you can think of it like there's an ERG at a company or an affinity group or a chapter of a thing at a college. And so within NASPA, there was an API affinity group. And so I'd been part of that. And then as my jobs changed and I kind of moved around, I fell out of being a member of NASPA, but I was still in the API group Facebook. Mm-hmm. And I was just at a coffee shop one day, drinking my little coffee and scrolling on my little phone. And the NASPA API group had a post from our CEO, Convu. And it was, hey, we're hiring for a director of collegiate programs. Check out this link if you're interested. And I was just like, oh, that's a job you can have. And so I clicked on it. I started reading about it. And, of course it makes sense that an organization that has a whole nationwide collegiate programs would have a director of collegiate, but it just never, it's one of those things that it didn't occur to me that that's a real job that real people can have. And obviously those people work at SHIP and NSBE and Tau Beta Pi, or, wherever other organizations. I don't know what all their structures are, but of course that's a thing. And it just never occurred to me. So I clicked on it and I was reading through it and everything was just really exciting. So I'm really glad I didn't leave that Facebook group, because I never would have sought it out. I never would have heard about it. Probably nobody would have told me about it because, it's such a special and sort of specific thing. I have no idea how else it would have come across my desk. So shout out to the power of Facebook and drinking coffee, I guess.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think because also SACE is like a newer organization compared to a lot of the bigger affinity groups, we were expanding in terms of all these positions, and so yeah, no, it makes sense that that would happen. But how did you get involved in like student outreach and that sort of thing in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, that goes way back. Like a lot of people who work in higher education, I didn't ever set out to work in higher ed. I was, a student at Michigan Technological University, is my alma mater. And, I had a student job where I was working in the summer camp program. So we bring up middle and high school kids to spend a week learning about science and engineering and all this fun stuff. And through being involved with that office, I got really embedded into kind of the student affairs world and the typical ways you end up working in student affairs, like, oh, I was an RA and it was amazing, or oh, I worked orientation and it was amazing. And I came up through outreach basically as an undergrad. And when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And the office that I had been working for was kind enough to not kick me out. And they said, well, we'll give you a temp job while you figure out your life. And I never left. And I ended up spending 10 years working at Michigan Tech in various roles. I really liked the outreach thing because I came to learn that something I really like is helping people figure out who they are and what they like and what they want to be. And so doing the outreach piece, we're just surrounded by kiddos all day and we're showing them how exciting STEM can be, and their eyeballs are like this big and they're just so excited. And that's kind of where it all started for me, I guess.
Oh, wow. So, like you kind of mentioned that your initial goals weren't to move into like higher ed. Like, what were you majoring in college, and like what was initially what you were trying to pursue in college before you kind of shifted after school?
Yeah, this is not going to be a tidy or inspiring answer, but I went to college without a plan. I went to college undeclared and I
Okay.
picked up majors as I went. I knew I wanted to do something STEM-ish. I've always been really into science and kind of a nerd. And so I knew I was going to do something STEM related. So I landed at Michigan Tech and kind of spent my first year or so being undeclared and wandering through different, you take intro to this and intro to that to sort of figure out where you want to be. Landed in a math major, which I mostly picked to prove I could do it, which I don't know if that's a great reason to pick your major, but that was the reason that I had at that time. And as things went on, I was taking my general education classes, and I really liked some of my classes in sociology and in law. And so I ended up later on adding a second degree in social science. So my undergrad is a dual degree in math and social science.
Oh, okay.
Which isn't a combination that anyone would pick on purpose, probably, unless you wanted to do sociological research, I guess. But, by the time I realized I wasn't actually good at math, I was way too far into it, to quit. And I had honestly a lot of really good professors, but it wasn't something I was actually good at. I was really good at social science. So kind of finished out the math degree and then finished out social science to round it out.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like I was also undeclared too when I started school.
Yeah.
And Jason and I always talk about how it was weird. It's weird that like they just expect you as a 17, 18-year-old to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life or have an impact, like, what you want to study for the rest of your life. So we're just like, yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And, I really admire my friends and my colleagues and our community, folks who go to college saying, you know what, I'm going to study this and I'm going to be a this, and then they do it and they like it. That is just amazing to me. And I am so proud of those people. But I have never been a person with a plan. And that is kind of goofy because in my actual working and everyday life, I'm very structured and very organized. But when it comes to where I'm going in my life, I've been very kind of ride the waves and see where they end up. And all of it has been really good. I've been really, really lucky that all of the weird little, well, the current's going this way, I'm just going to like hop on the little boat. That has worked out really well for me. But yeah, I didn't have a plan of what I wanted to be because I thought I was going to be all these things. And then I did none of them and ended up working in higher ed, which has been just the best thing that's ever happened. But definitely wasn't the intention.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you kind of mentioned like going with the flow in terms of like your career and stuff. So like, what was your mindset when you decided to switch from being in higher ed at Michigan Tech to jumping to SACE? Like, were you hesitant for a couple of reasons, or were you kind of ready for something new? Like, just generally, what were you thinking around that time?
Yeah, the honest truth is it wasn't really in my mind. I had been in higher ed for about 10 years professionally. I was like, okay, what where am I headed kind of long term? That's a reasonable thing to be thinking. But I had only been in my most recent position for a year when I found out about this job.
Hmm.
And I have always been very, very careful to not be a jumper and move from job to job to job, because I really want to make an impact where I am and learn the thing and give it a fair shot. And so I was not actively looking for something when I stumbled across the SACE position. It just honestly popped up out of the sky. But when I saw it, I was like, this feels like the universe is giving me a little prod. Like, I should check this out because it involves working with college students, which I have done for a long time. It involves developing young leaders, which I have done for a long time. It's in a DE&I kind of space, which I've always been involved with here. It's different, but not so different. It's still working with college chapters. It's still higher ed adjacent, but like not working on a campus. But already it's been useful being able to tell chapters, oh, no, you need to talk to this kind of office on your campus. And they're like, what? I didn't even know that office existed. I'm like, yeah, well, that's why I'm here. I can point you in that direction because I know how a campus functions. But yeah, I hadn't been looking for anything in particular other than I'm always attentive to things that seem like the right place and the right time. And it worked out. I think the fact that we're a remote team really worked because my partner and I are not interested in moving out of the community that we live in. And so anything that I was going to take on next, whether it was still in higher ed or not, was going to have to be remote or still in our town. So that was also very appealing.
Yeah. So speaking of working remote, it's kind of different than working on the campus, obviously, right? You're interacting with college students in person, but remotely you're working with all these different collegiate leaders and other SACE squad leaders, I guess all remote, and you probably only met them like in person last week, right? At the convention. How was that experience? Yeah, what can you speak to that and like how that is, what you think of that?
Yeah, I guess the candid answer is I think it's both a really good thing and really hard. I think being remote is inherently helpful because we're a nationwide organization.
Right.
What I mean by that is we're able to have collegiate volunteers or programming committee volunteers or IT volunteers or chapters or people in all these time zones. And so it wouldn't make sense for the West chapters to always have to meet with an RC who's based in the East Coast, because somebody is going to suffer the time zone consequences of that. And so I think it's really cool that we're remote because we can kind of actually have presence in all the places where our programs are happening, whether that's, SACE Pro Colorado or whether that's a collegiate chapter in making up a place, but like, whether we're talking about Northeast or Colorado. But it's hard because no matter how well you think you're communicating, you're not communicating as well as you think. And that's been really tough because we have email, we have Slack, we have all these Zoom calls, we do all these things, but it's not quite the same as being able to turn and like holler out the door over there and be like, what do you think of this idea? You have to articulate it clearly and wait for response and hope that nothing got lost in the tubes of the internet. So I think it's cool. It allows people to be where they want to be. It allows people to, connect with folks in their own geographic region in a way that might be really hard otherwise, but it's not always easy. And it's a huge bummer not seeing everybody all the time in person. As great as it is to talk to you all right now through this interface, it's not the same as, walking down the hall and Jenny being like, are you Liz? So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a mixed bag for sure.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Like, because I used to be in the Northeast region, and that's how I know Jason because we went to college together. And now all of a sudden I'm on the opposite coast. But my network has grown where I know a lot of people in different regions. But yeah, I only see them maybe once a year if I go to convention. But it's always a great time. Every time we see each other, I go to all these workshops and, get to catch up with them basically. So it's like it's like time started again, right? It's like stopped and started, and we
Right.
catch up like we've always been friends and talk. So I think that's the interesting with SACE that I've seen. I don't know, Jason, how do you feel about that? Since you were a volunteer, you were actually a volunteer for UNRC and
Yeah,
chapters and stuff like that. So
I guess like a few things on my mind, just in terms of like the staff that's on SACE. I think it's really cool that we are remote because now we get to hire people like Liz. Like we get to hire good talent that might not necessarily be in Denver or wherever we decide that we want it, and we could just really focus in on the people who are the most qualified and most fit for the job. So I think on a just like staff perspective, that's really cool. But in terms of like as a volunteer, it's definitely interesting. It's really hard to like feel really connected sometimes. Like my first year was during COVID, so normally all of your roles are going to be remote anyway, but we didn't even get to have certain in-person events that normal teams do, like a retreat or going to national conference or regional conference. Like we missed out a lot of those types of in-person events. And when comparing that year in COVID and the next year, like it was such a big difference to feel like really connected to my team. So the first year was just trying to have late night calls, trying to get to know people, but feeling really separated. And then the second year, we were able to get some more of those in-person activities. And that's when I felt like the closest to my team and felt more trusted in working with them and feel like I have like a more long-term relationship with them just because I was able to meet with them in person, just get stuff outside of like SACE work to just get dinner, get drinks, do whatever. So yeah, it's been cool.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry, yeah.
No, I'm just agreeing with you. Yeah, it's
Oh,
tough balance, but I think being out of the COVID times has been helpful for sure, to your point.
yeah. Yeah, it's really cool seeing like I guess like I'm still friends with a lot of people who are active volunteers, and it just feels like just seeing through social media, like every weekend someone's kind of traveling to a different city and they're hanging out with the people who are in those cities, and it's just really cool to see that community grow outside of just like your region and like the work that you're actually doing in SACE.
yeah, that's true. I've been adopted in the West region. Like the thing is, I've never been a collegiate volunteer, but because I know a few people, they kind of like brought me in to their hangouts and stuff like that, and then now I'm like, I know people. It's
You're
pretty
like the
cool.
go-to person, like Jenny, not gonna lie. It feels like when people go to California, it's like, oh, they're gonna see Jenny and Stefan
Okay,
and like Shweta, and that's like then
yeah,
everyone shows up there too. But it's
that's true.
you're kind of like the
Are
home
you,
base now.
where in California are you based?
I'm in LA, so
Oh, that's right. I have a question for you after the podcast.
sure. Of course, yeah.
And Jason, remind me where you are.
I'm based out in Boston.
Okay. So we'll be right in your backyard next year then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really excited for that. It's kind of hard. Like I obviously didn't go to a convention this past weekend, just because it's like always hard to kind of coordinate plans and stuff. But here, I'll be here anyway. I'll still be able to hang out, even though I'm not like on the collegiate team or anything like that.
That's okay. We want everybody there.
I'll be there too.
Let's go.
All right, cool. Yeah, it's really good to hear kind of like your journey and like how you ended up at SACE and then what you've been up to for SACE. I guess like we can talk more about SACE, I guess like for a convention. How was that?
Yeah, we can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah.
National convention was cool. It was really cool. I came in at a time when preparations were really ramping up. And so every meeting, all anybody was talking about was national convention and what are we doing for this? Are the logistics good for pro? Which collegiate chapters haven't used all their codes yet? Get registered. All these things. And, we're going to put this in A3 and this will be in 411 and just trying to come to understand what that means. Or when people talk about the whatever it is, right? Oh, this is the part where we do the fashion show, or this is the part where we have the chopsticks. I was like, what chopsticks are you talking about? Turns out it's a sponsored thing and everybody gets a pair of chopsticks sponsored by one of our OAC members. Like, that's super cool. I just had no idea what people were talking about. And so being able to actually be there, be in the space and start to see it happen, I was like, okay, this is what SACE hack means. And when they say SACE hack, this is what they're talking about, or this is what these awards are. And these are the kinds of people who are getting these awards. And just like, it's sort of that difference between, actual tangible street knowledge and book smarts, where I was like, okay, I know what some of these things kind of are in theory, but being able to see it actually made it coalesce in my brain. And I think that actually has been the most helpful thing since I started the job, was just being able to go to the convention and meet the people and see the faces and watch it all happen. Because it, in a way, it takes this whole nationwide program that's happening in all these places and all these things that are kind of popcorning off in the corners, but now it's all here and it's all happening all at once. And so now I have a better understanding as it kind of launches back out to where everybody came from. It really was eye-opening. I think I have a lot more ideas now, and I know, you know, speaking for myself, I feel like I built much better relationships with people. And, you know, coming in as the new person, and especially coming into something people care about as much as Collegiate, I would guess, and I have sensed that there's a lot of, like trepidation, like, who is this person? And she's coming in, and what does it mean? And there's still a lot of stuff that isn't set in stone of where we're going, but I had to learn it all first, and I had to learn all of you first. And so the national convention helped me with that immensely. And so I hope that other feels the same way. I feel a lot better after NC, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure like with the volunteers, it's just nice to finally put like a face to the name, or just get to talk to you outside of just a call. Can you kind of like speak a little more about like how those interactions were, and just meeting like the SASE community as like a whole?
Well, I had the good fortune of meeting most of the squad. I had joined actually a meeting before I was officially started. It was after I accepted the job, but before I had started, I went to a meeting. They had a quarterly in Detroit, which luckily is one of the easier places for me to get to. So I hopped down there and had the good fortune to meet them there. So it was good to see them all again and spend a little bit more intentional time together. Meeting volunteers and meeting some of the wider SACE community was just really energizing. It was really cool to be met with such warmth, and, you know, even sometimes the goofy things. Some people are much taller than I anticipated because we're all sitting down and talking on Zoom. And then I walk into a room and there's like this which isn't saying a lot, I'm not very tall, but like very tall person. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so-and-so, or, you know, those kinds of things. And just getting to share a joke with people and hear how they interact with each other. And I'm a big fan of a crisp high five, like walk around and just, you know what, you're doing a great job, give some high fives, that kind of stuff. It just, yeah, you know, to your question about the remote work, it just made it feel so much more real. And so I think I had a lot of really good conversations. I hope that the others involved would say the same thing. But yeah, just great to have some coffee or chat while we're both carrying a box somewhere, and, you know, just get to know people. I don't know, that there's not a good way to replicate that without just being there.
For sure. I 100% agree with the height thing. That's so fun. I met some of the podcast team that also helps run the podcast, Ronik and Aaron. Ronik is tall.
Yep. Ronik is tall.
I did not expect that.
Yeah. Also very tall, Randy. Randy is very tall.
He's very tall. It's a role model.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. I thought it was great. I had a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was recently in a room with Randy, Ronak, and Wes, like the Northeast regional manager, and I'm just like completely staring at them. They're so freaking tall. Oh, they're so tall. Yeah, I'm really glad that it seems like it was a pretty positive experience from NC, and hopefully kind of with this podcast too, when people might see you at something like a regional conference, it's like a good foundation to hear more about you too, just as a person outside of just SACE too. So I think that's one of our main focuses on with the podcast, and just like learning kind of what you do outside of SACE, how you've been kind of adjusting to adulting, like what we call it, just transitioning from that college age to like changing your perspective as an adult. So I guess like in that sense, I know you've been working for, you said like over 10 years, but how would you kind of describe that transition? Like you were still on campus, but transitioning to just being kind of more like having more responsibilities outside of school and everything.
Yeah, I want to be a little mindful in how I answer that. Maybe I should back up and talk a little bit about like my full professional history. I don't know if that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure.
Because like you said, I have been a working professional for just over 10 years. And so I'm not quite in that same transition point, but moving into a new job is just as scary as graduating college. I'll say that. So basically I worked in outreach and running a lot of those programs for about 7 years. And so I've been effectively a camp director, I guess you'd say, and a lot of other things working up to that point, right? Like I didn't launch into that, but and I spent 3 years as an academic advisor. So to all the listeners who are in school still and you have an academic advisor, I hope yours is a good one. And if you struggle with your academic advisor, I'm sorry on behalf of all advisors, because a lot of us try very hard to support you and be good advisors. I worked in the electrical and computer engineering department. So shout out to all the computer engineers out there. I understand. And I have helped advise many, many of your peers here at Tech. And in that role, I served on a lot of committees within the department. I've been on like every hiring committee on this campus at some point or another. I've facilitated at the Leadership Institute when it was hosted here on campus. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of really cool things, including a little bit of policy work on campus. And then the most recent role that I was in before I came here was being in advancement. Some places it's called development, but basically it's sort of the fundraising wing of the university. And so I was the director for foundation relations. So going after foundation funding to support scholarships or new labs or things that would improve the student experience. And so, working up through all of those things, I learned a lot in each one of those roles, especially about how to function as a professional. But jumping into SASE and moving away from the sort of comfort of campus, which even though I wasn't a student anymore, you do get really comfortable in the place where you live and work, and especially on a college campus, because that's sort of the vibe that higher ed has. It's been really good, but it's scary. It's really scary to put your trust in a whole bunch of new people who don't know you and you don't know them. You don't know all of the lingo and all of the processes or not processes, right? And, coming in and saying, okay, how do we do this? And either getting, oh, we don't really have a thing for that, or getting, wow, here's, all the things that, I have to get a dossier of information about. Getting to know new coworkers, learning new routines and rhythms, learning how to work in a different office or a different environment if you're remote. Yeah, it's really tough. And the main reflection that I've had is that it's okay that it's tough. I remind myself of that every single day, that when you're learning a new thing, you have to give yourself grace, and you have to give grace to the people who are helping you learn, and hope that they give that back to you, right? I've asked for a lot of people's patience, and I've thanked a lot of people for explaining stuff to me, because I know it can be hard to onboard a new person and bring them into this world. So I think I lost the thread a little bit on your original question, but wanted to kind of give full context to how I landed here. The other thing, because I was reading through your questions ahead of time, and the other thing that I've been thinking about, I had a conversation with, I think, 2 or 3 volunteers this past week about the transition point out of college and into career.
Mm-hmm.
If you're out there listening and you are feeling a little unmoored and a little lost and a little bit unsure what to do with your life, that is okay. The first couple of years out of college are one of the weirdest times of life. And I could talk about the reasons all day long, but it is a strange time. And I just want to reassure everybody, if you take nothing else away from my advice in this podcast, is that it's okay that life is weird the first few years out of school. If you don't go to grad school, right? That's different. If you go on to graduate school, you kind of maintain a semblance of what you have known up until that point. But really, for everybody else, when you graduate and you wander off into the world, it's like, well, now what? And that's a pretty universal experience, so don't feel weird if that's you.
True. But did you go to grad school? You did, right?
So I did go to grad school. I took 5 years off before I went back. I was super burned out after my undergrad as a result of doing 2 degrees. And then I was also a student leader for 2 student orgs and like working a couple of jobs. And I did the whole thing and couldn't fathom doing more school. But I did go back in 2017. I got my master's degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Shout out UIUC.
Nice.
So how was that experience then, going back from like you were working and doing all this stuff, and then you went back to like kind of more structure? how was that transition for you?
For me, it was completely fine. I knew I would be able to do it. I never had any doubts about my ability to go back to school because I'm an enormous dweeb and I love being in school. So like my primary hobby outside of work is reading. So I knew that that was going to be okay. I found it a little underwhelming, mostly on account of you still have to do group projects sometimes, depending on your master's, and group projects do not improve just because you're in a master's program. So there were some elements of it I was not thrilled with, but I mean the actual program was great, and I didn't have any challenges with it. But know yourself. If you know that as soon as you're done with school, you're like done and you're not going to pick that momentum back up, just stay the course, do grad school. You know, if you have enough gas in the tank to keep going and you know yourself, I would recommend it. But if you know yourself and feel that you'll be all right to pick it back up, then it's fine. I had no concerns.
Nice. You kind of mentioned how like that time after school is just like kind of weird. Was that more of a realization, or like being accepting of that time, was that more of a realization kind of after you got past that point? And also like what do you think helped you kind of get past that? I know you mentioned just giving yourself grace, but is there anything else either internally with yourself or externally that kind of helped you through that time?
Yeah, it definitely was a realization after the fact. The reason why it's so weird, and this is not rooted in student development theory, this is just my observations of the world. We grow up with do a good job in school, stay in school, graduate high school, get into a good college, go to college, get your degree, get a job. That's where kind of the upbringing messaging sort of ends for everybody. It's stay in school, go to college, get a job. Then what? You caught the car. You're like the dog chasing the car kind of thing. And you know, there's so much other stuff that's waiting. And so I've talked to so many young alumni who come back, you know, maybe I was their advisor, or maybe I was their mentor or their supervisor when they worked for me at camp or something. And they're like, I got this really cool job and I live in a really cool place, I guess, but I don't know anybody here. I don't know what my hobbies are because all I've done is school the last 4 or 5 years. I don't know how to just like be a person because we get it. You have built-in community at college. You have your friends are all right there. Your hobby is basically school and whatever student orgs you're in. Like everything's really, I don't want to say easy because college is hard, but some of the social parameters are sort of set for you.
More accessible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's baked in. And those first couple of years out of school, yeah, my friends all moved away. I was one of the only people who stayed in this area. I didn't leave the place where we went for school. So all my friends moved away. And I was lucky that I knew some people around campus, but most of them were people I had worked for as an undergrad. And I'm not like going to hang out with my old boss. I do now. I'm like best friends with my old boss, but it, you know, as a early 20 something, you're not gonna go chill with the dean of students. Like it's weird. And so really the thing that helped me the most was I, you know, was lucky that my partner and I were already together at that point and he moved back here. So I had some support network. I wasn't totally by myself and I knew a lot of great people and we just started going to stuff, sort of showing up to random community events or going to sports games or just showing up and meeting people and slowly putting out the feelers of, okay, where are the other young professionals at? Okay, this environment, that one didn't really work for me, but this event was really cool and I like that person. But it takes time. And I think it just takes a lot of effort and that's very tiring. So the main thing is that it does take active effort because you're not going to find your people if you stay home. But going out and trying to meet people and maybe successfully or more often unsuccessfully trying to make connections because it takes a while to get to know people. It's just exhausting. So it's, again, I don't think there's a tidy solution. I think it's just hard. Starting over in a new city with your new job, with new coworkers and maybe or maybe not your partner, that's tricky.
Yeah.
Relatable content. I was like, yeah, everything you said was like, yeah, it was true. I moved like out of my college city and I didn't know barely anyone here. And then I've been studying all my like people knew me as the person in the library, like
Mhm.
at 4 a.m. They're like, "Oh, where's Jenny?" Oh, probably at the library. And then I was like, well, what do I do now? I can't just
Yeah. Like who or what is a Jenny without school? That's the
right.
question we're all trying to solve.
Yeah.
And so I think, the other thing that I would advise is honestly re-engage with your hobbies, because the first thing I did when I graduated was I started reading again for fun.
Mhm.
Um, and if your hobby is volleyball, or your hobby is gaming, or your hobby is whatever, like actively re-engage in the things that you wish you had had time to do during school,
Right.
because that has brought me, immeasurable joy. I basically do nothing but read, unless I'm, I guess, doing 1,000 other things. But that made a huge difference. But yeah, it's that social grind of going out and meeting people, and that
Yeah,
is
for sure.
in some ways looking for friends is worse than dating, right? It's
Oh,
really
yeah.
hard.
Yeah. I will also say that I think as someone early career, early 20s, kind of like moving to a new place also has been really exciting in that I also have more money to do things that I've always wanted to do that I couldn't have
Mhm.
necessarily done in college. So I've been traveling a lot, going to concerts, and if I don't like it, my motto is like, I'll do it once. If I don't like it, then, it's all good. But I
Yeah.
want to have those experiences to expand like my worldview and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Being game for new experiences is huge.
Hmm. That's
Mhm.
an adulting thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I have good actionable advice other than to take solace in the fact that you're not by yourself. Everyone goes through this.
Hmm.
This is like a universal life experience in my mind. It's a canon event.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the more satisfying things of doing this podcast for now, like 3 years. It's just like hearing through these struggles and like not necessarily hearing about those things during college, but then understanding that like everyone in slightly different ways has gone through a lot. Like I think we talked a lot about just trying to find community outside of those fixed settings in college, or going outside of the path of, like you said, going from high school and stuff, and just trying to figure things out on your own. And whether there's really anything to go off of it, it's just been really satisfying to hear that that's the case for people from different communities, different states, different schools, like all of that. It still kind of congregates to the same feeling of trying to figure things out, I guess.
Yeah.
um I'm kind of curious, you mentioned kind of like this like social grind of trying to meet new people. Do you think that's more of like a continuous thing of like going through that, or is it something that you find and then you kind of settle into more?
Mm. I don't know. I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that, because I don't want to say that there's a right or a wrong answer. I have sort of chapters of my life from which I have really important people. And in a way, like my social network has grown over time with every chapter of my life, because I still have really close friends from back home. I still have a few close friends from high school. I have a core group from college. I have a very strong core group of friends from my first 10 years of work. And then I also have my community of friends who like live here and that I socialize with on a day-to-day basis. And now I'm collecting all these new friends through SASE. And I think for some people, it's a little bit more the case that you have sort of people and then they sort of, maybe your lives move on and you lose contact and stuff. And I've just been really lucky that most of my core groups have sort of stayed intact. And so for me, I like to collect wonderful people and keep them in my life as best I can, even if the circumstances change. But it's also pretty natural for those relationships to be good and meaningful, but maybe drop off a little bit as everybody's lives go in different directions. And that's also normal and fine. And I'm not suggesting that I keep in touch with every person I've ever met, right? I don't, but I guess I both am always looking for new connections and have also settled into certain rhythms with people. That one's a yes and.
No, I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think for some people, they kind of like if they're set, it's like because you have to dedicate a certain amount of energy to like if you want to meet new people versus maintaining connections that you have or expanding those relationships, I guess, right? So it's like
Yeah.
yeah, that's like a
And
thing different case by case
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have a blend of friends from afar and friends.local, so to speak.
Mm.
That's a phrase that one of my friends uses. Having your long-term people that you can call or text or see at a wedding and be so happy to connect is really, really important. But you also do have to have actual physically present humans in your city that you can go and have dinner with or whatever. I think nowadays it's easier to stay connected with people, even if you don't live in the same place, but it is really important to have at least a couple of folks that are in the same space as you.
Mhm.
For sure. All right, let's talk about hobbies.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, so what do you like to do outside of reading, I guess, and savoring that what we covered so far?
I don't do anything but read. No, I mean, I joke, but like I try to read at least 50 books a year. So that's my sort of primary thing.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I'm 9 behind on this year since starting the new job though. So I have some work to do over the next 3 months.
Mhm.
I know I keep hammering on it, but that's like legitimately that's my primary hobby.
Okay.
But also really into the outdoors. I love to cross country ski. I like to mountain bike. I like to run.
Wow.
Most of the time I like to run. I'm not good at any of these things, but I really enjoy doing them. It is super okay to be only okay at your hobbies. I'm an extremely average mountain biker, skier, runner. All of my time tickets from races, I'm like number 142 out of 290. Like it's fine to be average. We keep a huge garden. We keep backyard chickens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my partner makes maple syrup and he's done beekeeping in the past. We kind of do the rural out in the woods thing.
Uh-huh.
I don't play video games, but I really like Stardew Valley. I play a lot of Stardew.
Okay.
What else do I do? I don't even know. I kind
Good
of like
amount.
everything.
That's honestly
That's-
a good amount of
Yeah,
stuff.
that's a lot. I did see also on your LinkedIn that you're a board game enthusiast. Is that
Oh, yes.
a part of your okay?
I love board games. I love board games. I like podcasts. I don't listen to as many as I used to, but I do like podcasts. I read comic books. I don't know. I like everything. Like if people are doing a thing, I will probably join for the most part. Like I don't know. Kind of go with the flow. But yeah, primary hobbies are being outside, reading, and board games, I guess.
Oh, yeah, that echo that just sounds like a lot. So you do like races for like the outdoor stuff, like their cross country skiing?
Yeah, I participate in races. I pay the money and I get a time. I'm not like, again, I'm not actively good at any of it. I just really like doing it. And it's fun to go to the races like with my friends and then we just kind of ski along together and then we get hot cocoa, like it's fun.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's something I'm realizing with hobbies where in like high school and college, like I feel like I was just like really trying to hone in on like those skills or whatever, but it's just like a lot of effort and time to just like continually try to improve. And sometimes you kind of lose some of that joy too in kind of forcing that versus just like letting it be a hobby that you enjoy and not putting too much like stress on like that hobby itself.
Yeah, and that's really hard for those of us who tend to be strivers and are looking to always continuously improve and learn new things and do well at stuff. It takes a lot of intentional effort to let go. Fortunately, my body gave me that memo because I kept getting injured. And then I realized, Liz, if you just jog instead of trying to flat out run, you'll have more fun and you won't hurt yourself. I was like, oh, okay, got it. This is how we make it fun. So, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Is cross country skiing only on snow or is it on land too? Or is it like only when it snows? I'm sorry, I don't know if that's a dumb question. I don't know anything about
It's actually not as dumb of a question as you think. So don't say
Okay.
that. It's Nordic skiing. So yes, it's in the wintertime. It's on groomed trails that are groomed for you to go cross country skiing. It's not like downhill.
Okay.
However, really hardcore Nordic ski people get these like they're called basically roller skis, and they are like gigantic long flat roller blades, so they can practice in the summer on the road.
Okay.
Oh.
So that's not I would not say that roller skiing is a hobby most people do. It's just a way to practice cross-country skiing when there's no snow. But that is a thing, and you are not crazy for asking that.
I Googled it when you said that just to see. And I saw a picture of it on land. So I was like, oh, whoa. And yeah, it's the only one out of all the other ones are on snow. So I was like, okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yes. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So do you have your own set of skis and stuff that you like?
Yeah.
You doing for a while?
Yeah, I've got my Nordic skis. I've got my mountain bike. Like it's
Are
yeah,
Nordic
good.
skis different than the traditional skis that you would go on slopes with?
Yeah, they are skinnier and longer and they don't have edges. So like if you're going downhill on cross-country skis, you're not gonna be able to like cut and bank and turn as easily because they're not really designed for that. They're more designed to glide and go kind of like in smooth motions like this.
Interesting.
Come on up, I'll teach you.
I don't really particularly like snow sports myself because I just don't like being cold.
That's
But
fair.
I guess you wouldn't really be as cold if you're in motion and that sort of thing.
Oh no, work
Yeah.
up a sweat.
Yeah. Okay, maybe consider it.
Yeah.
Are you like really close by to a lot of things where you could like mountain bike or cross country ski, like where you are in Michigan?
Yeah, so I'm in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So everybody kind of knows the Mitten part, right? Where looking at it and Detroit's like down here and everybody knows this part. I'm actually in the second peninsula, the Upper Peninsula, that sticks out into Lake Superior. And so we are very rural. You know, a stone's throw from here, I have access to several trail systems for cross-country skiing, several systems for mountain biking, tons of hiking, a lot of kayaking. I mean, we're basically one of our primary industries up here is outdoor tourism. So
Gotcha.
It's a place where the people come to be outside, whatever that looks like.
So that interest has like always been with you growing up and stuff, like just like outdoorsy. Oh, okay.
No. No, I mean I grew up hiking and stuff, right? My dad and I especially would go hiking and like my parents like being outside, but I learned all of it when I moved up here because I came to school in the middle of the woods and we have a whole outdoor recreation program here. And my partner is really, really, really outdoorsy. So, you know, from the time that we met, he's like, you're going to learn to go snowshoeing.
I see.
Learned skills, all acquired. I just picked up mountain biking and skiing in the last couple of years.
Gotcha. Cool. So yeah, I guess kind of jumping into some of the hobbies more, but we have like a rapid fire section that we normally do for episodes. So just kind of quick off the dome answers. So what is your favorite book that you read in the last year?
Panic. I didn't prepare for this.
Yeah, this was a surprise, this segment. You know, we were surprised. Yeah.
I think it was in the last year. My favorite book that I read in recent memory is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir.
Okay. All right. Next one. Favorite board game at the moment?
The answer is always Wingspan.
I've never heard of that. You know what that is, Jason?
Yeah. Well, I love board games. Like I feel like that's my go-to like thing that I want to do with friends. And yeah, some friends like recently got in Wingspan and like don't understand the mechanics too well yet, but I can understand the appeal.
It is probably my favorite game I've ever played. I love Wingspan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What was the first game that got you into board games?
Catan, like everybody else.
Oh, is it Catan, not Catan? Or is it either?
Oh, it's either. I've said both. I just say whichever one comes out of my face.
Okay. I was making sure just in case I didn't want to offend anyone. Got it. Okay.
Catan?
Are you offending the settlers? Is that what happened?
The settlers are upset. It is the gateway board game.
Okay.
Yeah. What was your last impulse purchase?
Oh, I started buying vinyl records even though I don't have a record player yet.
Oh.
Like this fall, I bought 2 vinyls and I was like, well, I guess I'll figure this out later.
Did you just happen to come across the vinyls? You're like, oh, I kind of like the art or something, or you're just like, oh,
yeah. I was like, you know, I like the art or the color, or 1989 Taylor's version is coming, so I just was like, I'm gonna buy that, and then I bought
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran's new album because it was really cute, and I like the art and stuff. And I was like, well, Liz, you don't have a way to play these.
Speaking of Taylor Swift vinyls, I think the Midnight's one, it's like you buy them in a group of four and you can make a clock out of it. I don't know if you've seen that.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah, I've seen it.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty cool. I thought that was pretty cool. I personally
Yeah.
don't have vinyls or anything, but yeah.
Mhm.
Damn.
Okay. Next one. Do you have anywhere that you want to travel next that's on your bucket list?
I desperately want to go to England, like
Mm.
desperately. I've never been. I've been other places in the world, but I've never been there, and I want to go so badly.
Is there anything particular in England that you're like hoping to check out?
No, I just really want to go. I can't explain it. It just seems like a place I'd really like to go. Or like Scotland, England, Ireland, like that whole kind of chunk of Europe. I would like to visit.
Yeah. I feel like if you love outdoorsy stuff, like Scotland will be really, really cool for you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What is the best city that you visited that with the best food?
Ooh. Everywhere in Japan, the food is good.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess I would say like Tokyo, right? Anywhere in Japan is my
Oh,
answer.
I'm actually going in a week and I'm like so excited just
Have
for the
so much
food. That's
fun.
all of it.
Have so much fun. Eat your way through Japan. You will not regret it.
I'm so excited too. I'm going next year.
Incredible.
Okay. I think that's all we have for Rapid Fire then.
Yeah.
So we can do our kind of wrap up question that we ask all our guests at the end of every episode. So in the theme of our podcast, since our podcast is the adult table, well, there's two questions. You can choose to answer one or both. So the first one is, what is one thing you did recently that made you feel like a quote unquote real adult? And what is one adult thing that you wish you knew sooner?
Okay. One thing that I did recently that made me feel like a quote quote real adult. This sounds kind of silly, but it was intentionally signing up for all of the loyalty programs and the travel credit card because now I have a job that travels a lot. Because I wasn't in like Delta Sky Miles or like
Oh yeah.
whatever, and then I got not one of the airline cards, but like a generic travel rewards card. I was like, you know what? If I'm going to be on the road, I'm going to get my points. So, now I'm trying to get to status and I'll feel really cool if I get to status. And then the second one was something adulty that I wish I'd known sooner.
Yep.
Okay. So I want to clarify that we still need to treat people with respect if they have like an important position or a title or whatever. Like we want to be respectful of people. The thing I wish I had known sooner is that everybody is just people at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And like we still respect them. We still, if they're coming to visit, we want to be providing a good experience or, good handshakes and professional meetings, blah, blah, blah. But everyone is a person. And keeping that in mind has been really helpful because even though somebody might have a really important role to play or they have a perceived position of power above you, at the end of the day, they do go somewhere that they call home. And they have people that are important to them and they have stuff that they worry about. And that is really important to keep in mind. And I try to bear that in mind every single day for every person, irrespective of where they fall in the professional universe, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I like that. I think that's also one thing that when I started working, I was like, oh my God, I'm meeting all these, even at SASE conference, I met a lot of VPs and execs. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what to talk to them about. But, just casual conversation about how are they doing? Or like checking in on them and their family and that sort. That's like pretty easy to do, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easier than we think, but it's also natural to feel a little like, oh, I can't talk to a VP.
Yeah.
I'm just me.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you again for coming on the podcast, The Adult Table. Do you have any socials or anything you want to share for listeners that can find and connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is probably just to find me on LinkedIn. I do prefer to connect with people if I have met you, but, being all in the SASE fam, I will recognize, that we have the same connections and stuff. For the SASE fam, I am also on Instagram. So it's, oh gosh, I have to spell it out. hi underscore it's underscore Liz underscore F. Hi, it's Liz F with underscores. So you're welcome to find me there. It's similar thing. I might not accept your connection unless I make sure we have some mutuals there, but glad to see everybody there.
Awesome. And yeah, for everyone else, don't forget to subscribe so you know when episodes come out, and you can follow us on our Instagram at the Adult Table Podcast for updates. I'm Jason Chin.
And I'm Jenny Chung, and we'll see you next time at the Adult Table. Thanks for listening.